my life just went down a crazy path, and I chose that life over every person that I cared about, everything that meant anything in my life. And I took that like fast track to like this dark bottom, you know, where I felt like there was no way out and there was no hope for me. I grew up in northern Westchester, so I grew up in a very suburban town. Played sports as a kid, so I played everything, football, baseball. I was a gamer, you know what I mean? Like most kids, played video games. And, as I got a little bit older, started getting into trouble. By the time I was 9 years old, I was, stealing cigarettes from my grandmother. And as a young kid, I was already kind of going down a bad path. Amidst getting in trouble, I still stuck with the sports, and probably till I was about 13 years old. And that's when I started to, drink and get high. That was the thing that I wanted to do most. By the time I was 14, quit every sport that I played. By the time I was 15 years old, I was already taking OxyContin, getting high every day, taking acid, snorting a plethora of different substances, and just getting blackout drunk. By the time I was 20, I was completely unable to hold a job anymore. I couldn't work, stealing from my family and friends, selling drugs, just so I could just keep getting high. Drugs and alcohol completely took over my life. Like there was no more having fun, getting high, and like enjoying life. Like that didn't exist. I reached a point where I truly didn't care if I lived or died. By the grace of God, I had a moment of clarity. There were so many times where I was like, how did I get this deep? Selling drugs, hanging out with people who, carrying guns, tons of money around. It's like, how did my life become this? And that's when I was like, man, I can't do this. But it had such a hold over me, I couldn't stop. So about 20 and a half years old, I reached out for help. And I had reached out to my father. I told him, I'm gonna die. I need help. He helped me get into a facility where I could get some treatment. Got into a 12-step program, kind of started my recovery. And I still, at that point, I didn't feel like I had any purpose. So here I was sober, but I still had all these things wrong with me. I still felt like I had this big hole in me that I needed to fill. I was always an athlete growing up as a kid. Some of the first things I did, I got into martial arts. I was like, yeah, that'd be cool. And so I got big into that. And as time went on with the martial arts training, while I was training for a fight, I was introduced to CrossFit and started doing CrossFit, got into some competitions and that kind of thing, just like small competitions. And I'd placed pretty high at a bunch of competitions, but it just wasn't winning. And I remember just being so determined and driven. I was like, I have to win something, man, I have to. And I started training for this small in-house competition. Went to the competition, some fierce dudes in there, and I won. And I remember just being like so happy. I was like, I did it, man. And like I really laid it out on the line. At the same time, I remember looking around after that competition, and I remember feeling so weird. Fast forward 2 weeks, I remember I kept stepping on the scale, and the scale kept going down, down, down. I'd lost like 15 pounds. And I remember being face to face with my girlfriend at the time, and she looked at me and was like, you look really skinny. My vision started to get really blurry. I was becoming disoriented. Like I felt like I was underwater. I felt like I was kind of like drunk. I don't know how I even drove myself to the hospital, but I went. They tested my blood sugar, and my blood sugars were so high, they could not even read them on a meter. So my blood sugars were over 1,000. And within 2 minutes, my life completely changed, and I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. And I remember sitting there in the hospital bed, and none of my family had arrived. It was just me strapped up to like an insulin drip and just being like, oh my God, this is gonna completely change my life. Like, what is gonna happen? All these different things. I knew it was a very serious, life-threatening disease. So of course, I was scared, and I had doubts like, I'm not gonna be the same. I'm not gonna be able to do all the things I wanna do in life and all this stuff. And I realized that this is something that I can really embrace, and being someone who's already fit really potentially inspire other diabetics or other people to, take their hardships, man, and wear them like a badge. I still have days where I have anxiety and fear and I feel off, man, and all that stuff. I still have that stuff, man. I'm so human. But I can honestly tell you that I have not had a bad day. It's gotta be like 8 years, because my perspective on life has completely changed, because I choose not to look at life that way anymore. I think one of the things, like my philosophy in training, is to be good at everything. So I don't wanna just like do CrossFit or like just be a bodybuilder. Like I wanna do some powerlifting and do a backflip and then a triple clap push-up and then jump 50 inches in the air. Like that just like excites me. Like this is cool, man. I wanna be the strongest I can possibly be. I wanna be the fastest. I wanna jump the highest I possibly can. All this stuff, yoga, all this stuff is awesome. We can take something from all of it. So like for me, like training style, like I do everything, man. And I'm so driven just to be better, man, to keep helping other people. Like sometimes I need to just chill out because I'm just like going. Because I'm just like fired up, man. I'm just like fired up in life. I was so beaten down, as a kid, with the drugs and the alcohol and like feeling like I just wanted to die and like I had no purpose. To be the man I am today and to be able to share and inspire people all over the world is incredible, man.